Welcome to episode 200 of the Necronama.com. Disclaimer, there are many more episodes than that because of The Simpsons, but, you know, these are the 200 full episodes, so here we are, calling it 200.
On Thursday, the 13th.
James Sabata, Donald Guillory, Bridget D. Brave, and S.A. Bradley are coming to Butcher Cabin Books in Louisville, Kentucky on Thursday, July 13th. Join us for an author reading, Q&As, tickle fests, whatever the hell happens. We don't know. It's going to be a great time. Come on out, buy some books, listen to some great stories, and have a great time with some people who truly love horror. We can't wait to see you at Butcher Cabin Books in Louisville, Kentucky.
So be there.
If you're thinking of starting your own podcast, you should check out the show notes from this episode. You can get up to 2 months of free hosting from Libsyn. You'll have access to critical stats, helping you launch your podcast, grow your audience, and bring your podcast to life. Go check out the show notes for the Libsyn promo code and start podcasting today. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and I'm about to rip my fucking soul open for you guys.
All right, I am Don, Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of the podcast that you're listening to, and at no point in this episode will I turn into Ned Beatty and squeal like a pig.
That's disappointing. All right, joining us today, Brian Haas. You were the first guest we ever had on this show in episode 6, and you immediately dove in and went, fuck you, I'm doing 2 movies. And you did The Terminator and T2. And now here you are, all these episodes later. For some reason, you're still willing to come back and talk to us, and we appreciate that. So welcome to the show.
Oh, welcome, welcome. He's a glutton for punishment.
Oh,
no.
Oh my.
Thanks for having me back and talking about the movie that we're going to talk about here today, because I think it's really good, and I would like a lot of people to see it, and hopefully talking about it a little bit will help that out.
So tell our listeners a bit about yourself, and then I want to come back to something you just said.
Yeah. So, yes, thanks. I didn't really introduce myself. My name is Brian Haas.
That's all good.
I am the co-host of the BS Movies podcast, which James and Don have both been guests of. And I've been a film critic for 30 years this year. And I can't believe that's actually true, but that's actually true. And I do all sorts of other things. I write, I produce, I do all sorts of things. Let's leave it at that.
Cool. So you said that you love this movie and want others to see it, and I happen to know that you have repeatedly said this was your favorite movie of that year. And what is it about Piggy? I mean, obviously we're going to delve into details in a bit, but like, what really puts it over for you?
So, I mean, there's a couple of different things. I love a movie that asks me a question that I don't know how I would answer, which the end of this movie asks me a question that I don't know how I would answer that. They put her in a situation where I'm like, fuck, I don't know what I would do there. And then the authenticity of the performance from the girl who plays Sarah, who, hold on, I got her name here, Laura Galan, is absolutely incredible. And I just was so happy that something like this exists in a counterbalance to something like The Whale existing, which is just like a really ugly, nasty, I mean, it's like basically My 600-Pound Life as a chamber drama, you know, and I don't feel like they had really any empathy for the character. And it was really just kind of look at this grotesque person being alive, as opposed to this actually looking at the problems of bullying and body dysmorphia and just being comfortable in your own skin, those sorts of things. It's so genuine in this movie, and it felt like I just felt this so much, where I was just so completely disgusted and turned off by something like The Whale. And to see that get so many accolades and so much adulation, and this comes out around the same time, that deals with very similar issues, doesn't make the main character a monster either. Like it's okay that this person is, overweight, and dealing with like body issues. It's not, look at this person. It's like, look at what this person is going through,
Yeah, definitely.
And so I don't feel like a lot of movies end up looking at it from the perspective of the poor person that is really going through all this. And then there's this sort of like allegorical thing that runs underneath the whole movie, where I feel like the killer is a stand-in for Sarah's rage. And it seems like when bad things happen to Sarah, that's when the killer seems to attack, and seems to like, pounce on things. And so I think it really is sort of an allegory for that rage that somebody that goes through this. I mean, this is something that I went through, certainly, going through like body issues and dealing with weight issues my entire life, where you have these, a myriad of emotions where it goes from like up to down, and you're just like rageful, and you're like sad, and you're like, all of these different things. And so I just thought the whole thing was just incredibly well done, and done with a lot of like grace towards the actress. Even though she has to have some pretty intense scenes where there's going to be some uncomfortableness because of, just her her having problems with her body. The character, not necessarily the actress. It's going to be very uncomfortable for some people to watch this movie. And so, but I think it should be a little uncomfortable to watch this movie. If you're not like feeling for this poor girl, like from the bottom of your soul, like, are you even a person? Like lots of different things that I love about this movie.
Well, yeah, they're like, and the other thing is like her weight, or at least the bullying, I should say, not her weight, the bullying over her weight and her body image and things like that doesn't become, I mean, not in obviously in an allegorical sense, we could make that argument, but it doesn't become her motivation to go out and do all this, do all this revenge on somebody, to where it's kind of like, oh, look, I was bullied and that turned me into a murderer, or I had, or like we talked about on some of the panels in Phoenix, the idea that, oh, this person has a disability, whether it's physical or mental, and that's why they're the killer. Here it's, she's a person as opposed to a thing. She's being treated like a thing. And the fact that she just wants to be seen, she wants to not be treated as though she's something else other than a girl trying to figure out her life, figure out her existence, figure out, where she fits in the world. And I love that. And of course, before the show, we talked about it. I love that this is the way that they're going with it. And what you asked, or what you brought up, Brian, the whole idea of the question being asked by the film that you're not sure how you would answer it. That was my one problem, where I got to the end, and the ending can go either way for me, but part of me wants to see that other way it could have gone.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, I love that. You brought up The Whale. The Whale has been extremely divisive on my Facebook wall because I took a definite stance on it, and people did not like it, because apparently I'm a bad person for thinking that it doesn't matter if you're a good person. If you take a role like The Whale, then fuck you.
Yeah.
And I stand by that, and anyone can send me hate mail. I don't give a shit, because at the end of the day, to me, a fat suit is the last thing you can do that's blackface. And we all know why blackface is bad, and we can understand that just fine. But a fat suit, what's wrong with that? Let's make Thor funny. Let's give him man boobs. Let's make Brendan Fraser 600 pounds, because, you know, and every fucking comment was, well, yeah, you could get an actor that size, but it's a liability, and you don't know what's going to happen, and it might be too hard on that. Fuck.
Wait, hold on a second. Before you go any further on this,
Yeah.
I'm going to add an addendum. I will be Luther for you at this moment, James, because all three of us, I mean, I'm adding you in this, James, because we talked about this before. All three of us have had or have body issues.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
the idea of, oh, we can laugh at the fat kid. We can laugh at the fat kid. Like, there's shit that family members have said to me, like when I was 8 or 9. Here, fuck it. Before even that, I had a doctor. I was already having, issues with, with my body and whatever. And I go to try and do kind of the typical male things. I'm like, oh, well, I should be playing football. So I go to the doctor to go get a physical, and they're like, oh, you don't have a hernia, you don't have this, but the whole turn and cough, that type of bullshit, right? I don't even know if they do that in physicals anymore. But doing all those physical exams in order to get permission to play a sport I really didn't want to play, but it was the whole thing of fitting in. And when you're a fat kid, you know where you're going to play when they pick you for football. I was an offensive lineman.
Yep.
Like, that was right where I went, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh, okay, this will be fun, this will be great, and then you're like, this is stupid, this is pointless. Sorry, anybody who's out there as an offensive lineman. I'm just saying that was my experience.
That was the whole reason I didn't play football, because they were like, we'll put you on the line. I'm like, I see what happens to those guys on the line.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, my mom, she's like, oh, he quit because he didn't like getting tackled. I'm like, Mom, I wasn't having fun. Like, it wasn't enjoyable. Like, I was thinking like, oh, we're going to be doing this. But anyway, the physical, the doctor then points at my chest. Like, I can't remember if he just touched the tissue or not, but he said, you know what this is? And I said, oh, it's a, cause I'm a nerd. I'm a science nerd. I'm a medical nerd at this point. So I'm like, oh, it's the pectoralis majoris. So I'm thinking, because he's a doctor, he's going to be impressed by that.
Yeah.
He then says, no, this is early onset male breast development. And at that moment, my fucking perspective on my body changed.
Oh, yeah.
You talk about like, careful what shirts I'm wearing, covering my chest with my arms. Something that stayed with me so long. I've got the surgery like 4 years ago, to the gynecomastia surgery. And for anybody out there who's like, oh, well, you don't need to do whatever to feel better. Fuck you. People can do what they want to feel better about their self-image, their body image, as long as it's not injuring or harming somebody else.
Yeah.
Or harming themselves. Because early in this film, I can't remember if it was Maka, or because it wasn't Claudia, but it was one of the other girls in the group. When they see Sarah, because I want to resist calling her Piggy as much as possible, the same thing as with the film Sissy. But when they see Sarah, one of the girls takes her fingers and does the what I took as bulimia motion.
Bulimia. Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, you make me disgusting and make me want to throw up. Like when we grew up in the 80s, that was, you're disgusting. And when I think of you, I throw up. That bullshit. I can't remember how it all went. But the motion she gives is like, you will solve all your problems by just going and becoming bulimic. And even the juxtaposition between her body type and those girls all look the same to me. They all look the same to me, even when it came to their mothers. Like, and I don't know if it was a casting decision or just by chance, but the way that they showed all these pretty, young, popular, thin, skinny girls, and then here's the frumpy, dumpy, heavy-set girl who's not popular, who doesn't really have any friends, and the one friend she had is now a complete bitch to her and bullies her and all this other stuff. And I mean, it was a great way to tell a story in the first 2 to 3 minutes without anybody having any significant dialogue to tell you where the story's going.
Yeah, it really does set the table very early. It shows you the level of the bullying that's happening, not just from her friends, but also coming especially from her mother.
Right.
The most devastating bullying I feel like in the movie comes from her mom, and like I think we've all probably had those moments with, like you were talking about earlier, with talking to family or to medical professionals or whoever, where it's just like, they just say something off the cuff, and it's like, oh, well, if you just ate a little less,
right.
Or, those sorts of things, I'm like, well, yeah, okay, great. I'm glad it's so fucking easy for you. I mean, I remember certainly my father, saying things, and then being a little like, later on in his life when he started to put on weight, being a little more understanding of that. Not that there was any apologies or anything, but like, and it's just sort of like, oh yeah, because it affects you now. You sort of see it, but like when it was happening to me, you didn't really seem to give a shit. If anything, you were making the problem worse, probably. And so that really hit home for me. Like, I love that, like, they don't even, like, the parents don't even have names. The parents are just mom and dad.
Right.
They never are, called anything else but that in the movie. And you can see that, like, it's not a completely horrific home life, because it looks like dad's a little bit more understanding, but like dad's also one of those guys that's just gonna, like, whatever mom says, he's not really gonna rock the boat, because
he doesn't seem like he ever wants to rock the boat.
Well,
even
he doesn't want it, I'm sure.
Even when she's at the when Sarah, is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
When she's at work with him, like, it's, well, your mother expects this, like,
right.
you got to do something. Like, even that, he won't rock the boat.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. I was looking at a quote from the writer and director of the film, and it fully explains. I mean, for anybody who's into writing, who's into film, I mean, you look at where an idea comes from. And she put this in an interview, and it was, I wrote this movie to confront my own fears, because, there are real life fears. Being a teen is terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
And we're not even adding any added context as far as, like, geographically, racially, gender, anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just at the sheer fact that you think about, which also gets me, it grinds my gears. It also grinds my gears when people do this whole, back in the day, we didn't do this, we didn't do that. Back in the day, this, there weren't, since we're recording this during Pride Month, it's like, there weren't so many gay people or there weren't any trans people. It's like, you weren't paying attention, and they didn't feel safe with you to have these conversations. Or the idea that, well, we used to say all types of racist stuff when I was in high school. Maybe the reason why somebody didn't say anything is because they didn't want to beat the shit out of you, because they're like, how am I going to explain getting mad and beating the hell out of this guy for saying, the B word or the F word or the N word or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
When you may be taught at home, like, just let them talk. They're going to talk. Just go to school, get through it. Because I remember having that conversation with my parents, which was, don't get in trouble at school. Like, don't fight. Don't do this. And my biggest fear was, because I was, quote unquote, one of the good ones, according to one of my teachers, Mrs. Cohen or Ms. Cohen.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of the good ones. And so my fear was, I know exactly what's going to happen if I take this mask off. Like, if I'm allowed to be who I am, and be fun, be funny, be silly, be goofy, whatever, then I would be free, as opposed to I'm shackled to this mask of, if I take this mask off, they're not going to see me the same way anymore. And I will say this to anybody who happens to be listening of a certain age, of a certain background. You're dealing in this film, in this film, what we're presuming to be high school students or maybe first year college students, because it's clear that she's a minor and maybe this is their summer before they go back for what would be the equivalent to a senior year.
Yeah.
But the idea that you, as a high school, middle school student, or even college student for that matter, you are surrounded by people for about 3 to 4 years that odds are you will not see the day after you cross that stage, the day after you graduate. I have seen, and I can count on one hand, how many people I've reconnected with in person after high school. One hand.
Yeah.
And I don't include the ones that went to the same college because that doesn't count. But I mean, as far as entering the real world, and you realize from going out into the world, which would have been wouldn't have worked with this film, but I think it would work with a similar film, of going and finding your tribe, finding your people. I mean, that's why I love the convention scene, because you get to see people presenting themselves as who they feel they are comfortable as. And I'm including whether people are just dressed up in normal attire, or they happen to be cosplaying, or they're dressing up or anything like that. The reality is they have to stop being themselves when they leave those events to be safe in the world, to be comfortable in the world, to not, as the father, to not rock the boat. Right. But the idea that you're in this environment for 4 years where you have to fit into a certain box in many different ways. And I'm sure the pressure on young girls is even worse. But the idea of body image being thrown in here, and it's clear she doesn't fit in with her friends. She really doesn't fit in with her family. She doesn't fit in that town.
Yep.
So it's one of these things of, you want her to get out of there. You want her to get out of that entire situation and be safe. And the last line that I forgot the young Roberto gives, he says, "Just relax. You're safe now." And that had so many different meanings. It wasn't because he doesn't know. I mean, obviously you can tell, like, oh shit, she's covered in blood. Something fucked up happened.
Right.
But it's also clear as a viewer when you're looking at it through this lens, like, she doesn't have to worry about her friends anymore, as far as like the people bullying her and talking shit. Because one, you can look at it as, oh, she's now a hero, but I don't see her as wanting to be the hero. I see her as, I just want to be left alone. Just leave me alone. Either be my friend or don't, because I'm getting picked on by everybody. Everybody. Like even her little brother, her little shitty brother.
Yeah.
who can't get toilet paper in the middle of the night and is, complaining about it. But her shitty little brother, who she stops the guy from going up and taking care of, is a bully to her as well.
I want to go way back to something Brian said.
Yes.
So you were talking about how the mom is the biggest bully. And I don't know that that's exactly how I feel, but what I do feel based on my own life is that my mom is a bully, was a bully, is a bully. And every other bully didn't matter as much, but the weight that it added to that, because you're hearing other people say the thing that the person who is supposed to love you says.
Right.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, fuck, it's not just her.
Yeah.
And that hit me so hard watching Sarah react, because that just like ripped those trauma wounds open for me with that and pissed directly in them.
Oh yeah.
And then like the dad, like my dad was not laid back and did not rock the boat. My dad was insane and added to it, but it was everything else that was wrong with me. My dad never called me fat, never worried about my weight. It was always how lazy I am, which translates into you're fat, by the way, or at least adds to it. And it was, like everything he did was what a man he is. And like, I don't know, it added to that as well. So even if you're not directly bullying, the other things keep adding to this weight. And I realize I'm talking about weight, but I mean the other kind of weight. And and I felt with Sarah that was just so well portrayed in this. And that's what's so key to this movie for me. We never have to know people's names. We never have to know anything about them. We experience the world as Sarah experiences it. So she's not going to tell us her parents' names. I don't say Jim and Phyllis. I say mom and dad, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
And the kids at school have names because that's what you would call them. But it's not Claudia, this last name. It's just the name. Well,
not even the full name. It's a partial name. It's a nickname.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like Clow and stuff like
Clow
that.
and Rocky and
Yeah, so like I feel like what this movie did so well that it literally hurt me to watch it is they portrayed every feeling she's having without screaming about it, without cutting one-liners about it, without look over here, I'm so sick of being fat and I'm so sick of feeling this way, and my only coping skill is eating something that makes me worse. It's all there without that, and that was
not
so
a single
incredibly
word.
fucking powerful to me. And then the only other thing I wanted to add with that is just how you run these scenarios in your head, right? Like, I hate this bitch. I wish this would happen to her. And I know we're going to get to the ending, but I think that this view from her point of view is so integral to, I can imagine people love or hate this fucking ending, right?
Oh yeah.
But I think these feelings and how it's portrayed solely through her without it being spelled out makes the ending so much fucking stronger.
Yeah. Because I mean, I'm questioning the first time I watched this movie. I'm questioning like, what is she going to do? And like, I think my reaction is going to be a little more akin to what Don's reaction, and probably what the more, I would say the more common reaction is going to be of like, let's put the shoe on the other foot, sort of thing. But the choice that they make is so powerful. Like, she really is the bigger person, in this movie.
And you can absolutely just talk about it too. We talk spoilers all the time, so go for it.
Yeah. So I mean, like, we're going to talk about the ending anyway. So, the ending of the movie is, her tormentors have been kidnapped by this killer who's just sort of like her unrepentant rage, just sort of manifested. I also felt like he was sort of the male perspective of what you would do in that circumstance versus what a woman might do. Yeah, I started to pick up on some of those things on like subsequent viewings, where I'm just like, well, that is really sort of what a very typical male, reaction would probably be to the circumstances that happened here. And so she does find her tormentor still alive after the town has been just, in complete terror because these girls have been kidnapped and they don't know what's going on, and the parents are all freaking out of their fucking minds. And she could very easily just say, you know what, I washed my hands of this. Fuck you people. You get what you deserve. And instead, she turns against the rage and like ends up saving these people that really don't deserve saving. Not even a little bit. Like, I feel like, maybe Cloud, there's a little bit of repent, but it's like the repent of knowing you should have done the right thing and you didn't,
Right.
Versus all the other ones where I'm just like, yeah, if they get put in a meat grinder, it doesn't really hurt my feelings, that sort of stuff. These are the people that we watch horror movies to get killed in, and like that they don't make that choice, I think is very bold. And I think that it's also like it fucked with me because like I think almost always in these circumstances when we watch these sorts of movies, the revenge is the cathartic piece at the very end, for whatever that character is. And for this, the cathartic piece is letting go of the revenge,
Yep.
and just like being the better person. And like, it's not the satisfying ending, but I'll tell you in the long run, it's going to make you a better, I would hope, I would hope I make the same choice that she does. I don't know that I do because, in the circumstance of being in the moment and being so pissed off about something, I don't think I could, make a very rational decision, and when that happens. But like the fact that she's able to like, even in that moment, compartmentalize the fact that while they're awful people and they do deserve to have, like karma shit on their lives, they don't deserve to be cut up in little pieces by some guy just because, and so like I would hope that we could all be Sarah, I really do hope, and like I just think that and they don't make the choice easier for her. That's I think the best part of this is she realizes as she keeps going along, it's just getting worse and worse. And like, she probably should say something, but like now that she hasn't said anything, there's a chance that she could get in trouble for all of this, and it's just like, just pushing it all to a head and just makes that last, 20 minutes inside of that, whatever, the barn or whatever the industrial factory or whatever that is that the ending takes place in, just makes that so like claustrophobic and panic inducing. And like, you're just sort of like, trying to catch your breath and it's not like the most intense sequence. There's certainly a lot more intense sequences in horror movies that you can see that are going to just, but like, man, that just really needled me, in a way that was like unexpected. And like the ending still fucks with me, like still to this day. I've watched it like 4 times now, and like still to this, I'm still like I was watching it last night and I'm like, oh man, I don't know that I'm going to make that same choice. So I'm thinking I probably am not going to make that choice if put in that circumstance, and am just completely blown away by somebody that has the wherewithal to be able to do that in the moment. Because like in the moment is the hardest part,
Right.
after you get past it and you can get past the hurt and, have some time to sort of, think everything out in your head, you can, sometimes it's a little easier to, in that moment, but like in the moment where it's just like everything is raw and you have to make a decision in a split second. Oh my God. It's so tough.
So this is so fascinating to me because you say that you wish that everyone would make the choice she makes, but you think you'd make the other. And I'm the direct opposite. I wish that I could make that choice, but I know I never could. And so there's a part of me that immediately, because of these trauma wounds, says, you're not man enough to pull the trigger. You're not whatever enough to do this. And I find it so fascinating that I know the choice I would make because I could not live with the other choice at all. And I have no doubt that that's the choice I would make. But with that said, it's so crazy to me how that adds to my own emotional wounds. Like, that's so weird.
Well, I got to ask both of you this because as the two of you are talking about it, it made me think about the perspective of making that choice, or a perspective that's going to determine how you make that choice. You, as a grown adult, do you feel as though you would feel the same way with the decision that you would make now, as opposed if you were in Sarah's position at 17, 18 years old?
Oh yeah, 1,000%. Like now I actually have some perspective and could actually probably like I could maybe have that moment in the moment to go, this isn't what I really want to do. Like when I was 17 years old, I'm putting both barrels into those kids.
Right.
You know, I'm
Same.
I can tell you right now, when I was in between the summer of 12 and 13, I turned 13 during that summer. And I went from being 5'7" and about 175 pounds to being 6'3" and about 240, you know? So a very significant change.
Mhm.
And the kid who bullied me tried to bully me the first day that I came back. And I literally lifted him off the ground and slammed him into a locker with his feet hanging. And I said, this never happens again. And he's like, this never happens again. I'm like, okay, you know, and it didn't ever happen again. But like, yeah, no, there wouldn't have been any like toiling or like any of that. It would have just been like, yeah, here, yeah, do you have 2 more shells? Because I don't feel like they're dead enough yet, you know, like, and now I think that I do have a little bit of perspective and I don't get quite as triggered in the moment. But yeah, I would have been terrible as a teenager. Like I would have done the worst. So
When I was a teenager, I would have joined the killer the first time I see him. Like I was really fucked up then. And I've written entire posts about how I could have easily been a school shooter. I was that bullied and I hated my life that much. And I'm very thankful that I didn't, like, that wasn't an option at that point. You know, like I graduated before Columbine. It's not something that ever crossed my mind. The closest I came, I was in a video game programming class and I wanted to pitch a game where you hide weapons around a school and then aliens have taken over your teachers and you have to go get the weapons and kill them, which today would be a gigantic red fucking flag for a very good reason.
Yeah, for sure.
And back then it was just probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But like I look at, if I was already there, right? Like that's in my mind. So if you added, I see Columbine, I see the 20,000 since then, you know, like, oh, that's an option. That's dangerous as fuck. So my answer to you is I would have joined the killer. As far as the choice, I would have never gotten there because I would have already been helping him out. And I mean that. I'm not making fun of that. I really feel I was that fucked up back then.
Well, at least you could admit it, because there are a lot of people that look back on their past and like, no, I wouldn't have done. And as you were talking about it, I immediately thought, again, to go with the adult me versus teenage me. Adult me, I'm going to think about it, or at least looking at me now, I think I would think about it, but I would cut them down, you know? I think, but it's like, I'm still not 100% certain.
But like call him every day and remind him, right?
Yeah.
Right.
You remember I saved your life, right? Remember that
Billy
time?
Madison where he called Steve Buscemi.
Yeah.
And shows up to
He gets taken off the list.
Yeah, he gets taken off the list. Exactly.
But 16, 17-year-old me, like you, James, like I would have gone off, because there was a lot of stuff going on at that time period, which we don't have time to get into. But there's a lot of stuff that would have easily, if I had access to a weapon, something bad would have happened. And thankfully, like my mom caught me. We didn't have like a heart-to-heart and discussion or anything like that. But like I just like was fed up with getting bullied by this one group. And you know, I called one of my friends and I said, you know, I literally said, I need a gun. I need you to get me a gun. And my mom overheard me because I was dumb and a teenager and I'm talking in the kitchen as opposed to like in my room or in the basement. And she's like, you know, she had a talk with me about that. And I immediately had that sense of shame of like, oh, I'm realizing how bad this could have gone. You know, guys are talking shit, picking on me, whatever. And I pull out a gun and shoot one of them, or, you know, they shoot me or anything like that, because there's now been an escalation. But the fact that you don't have to worry about this psycho killer following you around anymore. if you had made that choice. You now have to worry about the guilt that's now going to be following you around for the rest of your life if you had left them there, or if you had gone with him with the idea of let's do it together, let's kill them together. Like, you're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life because you're not that person. Like, that's not who you are. I mean, you're not some psychopath. You're not some person who's delighted in killing. Like, she's not even delighted in the idea of hurting somebody else's feelings, right? Because the one time she stands up to her mom, you get the sense like she even feels bad that she didn't say anything mean to her mom, but basically said, "You bully me. You bully me all the time. You make fun of me. Everybody does. Everybody here makes fun of me. You and Dad also, you guys do it as well." And you see, like, one, the pain of her having to say that out loud, because she hasn't said something like that out loud. She hasn't stood up to either one of her parents. But the fact that her mother's reaction to it is kind of lukewarm. It's that disbelief that a parent would give you at that time of, like, or even later in your life, you say, "Oh, Mom, you did this or you did whatever." Like, I have these conversations with my mom every now and then where I'm like, "Mom, you remember when I never said that to you?" I'm like, Mom, you don't remember, like, grabbing some extra skin when you had friends over and talking about how chubby I am? I never did things like that. Mom, you did.
Oh yeah.
I gotta tell you the worst one, like the one that affected me the most. Maybe it wasn't the worst, but the one that affected me the most. My college graduation. It wasn't even my bachelor's; it was my master's. Okay, so that's how old I am. My mom came to my graduation party. She hadn't seen me in months because I lived in a different state. And I was drinking heavily, and I was dating a girl who worked at the pub. So I ate free and drank free. And I don't know if you know how many calories that is, but that's a lot.
A lot.
Especially when you only like sugary alcohol, which was my thing, right? And so she loudly said at dinner with everybody there, she was like, "Oh, your present isn't here yet. I got you a new bra."
Oh,
Wow.
God. Jesus.
And I responded with, "Amazing, because women always have better clothes."
Wow.
But it took me everything not to jump across the table and beat her fucking ass.
Yeah.
And I say this because, like, you're talking about who I was as a teen versus now to make this choice. But it's a fucking spectrum, man. It's like 20 fucking people and the choices they would have made. And like, I look at that one situation and I was already way closer to here than where I was in high school, right? But the timing of that choice at any point in my life, or any point in Sarah's life, or any point in you guys' lives, it fucking changes. And that is scary as fuck, knowing that I could go back there next week.
I mean, that's one of the things that I think is so absolutely affecting about this movie, is the fact that, like, she even has that conversation, that terrible conversation where she's like, "You're the worst. You're the one who does the most. They call me Piggy," and all those things. And they get back to the house, and, like, her mom brings out the dinner, and she brings out like a big steak for her father and her brother, and she brings out a bunch of like salad for her. It's like, "Oh, I don't do anything, they call you Piggy," those sorts of things. And it's like, not only did you like not learn your lesson, you're doubling down.
Right.
And I think we probably had those sorts of moments in our lives too, where it's just like, this person did something hurtful to you, and you finally told them that you did something hurtful to me, and they just go ahead and do it again,
And it blows my mind because even with that, right? Because I've seen a good number of bad health and fitness influencers, as well as a lot of good ones. But the idea that, and what one of them said to combat the toxicity, is a salad is not going to change your life, right? But then even beyond that, you can't look at somebody's weight and determine whether or not they are healthy. They're making good decisions with what they eat. A lot of it is genetic. But the idea that you're going to project whatever negative interpretations you have about body image onto someone that is then going to literally tear them apart to where she has a nervous condition where she eats her hair. Like she puts her hair in her mouth because as soon as I saw that, I was like, wow, I've not seen that coping mechanism used or presented in this way, like in this type of film. But the idea that that's what everybody's solution is, like, well, just you need to do more push-ups, like pushing up away from the table, that'll get you. Like, no, that doesn't mean anything. But plus you can't always tie health to weight.
Yeah.
Like on a lot of charts, I'm still listed as overweight. But I had a medical appointment yesterday. Every last one of my labs, golden. There are people.
I wish I could say the same.
Oh no, it's just one of those things. Like because with my dad's conditions, because he's had heart issues since his 30s. So when I was a kid, he was one of those ones. Even before, well, actually no, even after. But even before he had been diagnosed and treated and stuff, he would make comments about my weight or using the term lazy, stuff like that. And he had a heart attack, then had to have a quadruple bypass. Yeah, quadruple bypass. And he would walk up to me with like fresh scars, right? He would walk up to me when I'm visiting and is like, you don't need to eat that. And he like rip open his shirt. It's like, you don't want to be part of the Zipper Club. I'm like, hold up here, Pops. I'm like, all right. You're gonna start fucking me up in my head worse than I already am. So he would do that type of stuff. And then like when I would come to visit, he would notice like I gained weight. So it now became a conversation about what the weight was and all this. Now, my dad was always, or I should say for the most part, he was always at a healthy weight. But if you look at his arteries, his heart, his lungs, like they're all fucked. And I'm sitting here at 40 because I thought about this when I hit my birthday recently. I'm like, I've not had any serious life-altering medical conditions. And my dad had them by the time, I'm trying to go back in time. He had them by the time I'd gone to college. And probably before then, because I'm trying to remember like the timeline. But probably before I went to college. And I'm 45 now. And, he just had another surgery to have a pacemaker put in. And I'm sitting there and every now and then, like, he's like, oh, yeah, my heart. I'm like, yeah, I remember you talking shit about me back when I was a kid. And that sticks in my head because now I'm always worried about, heart issues and cardiovascular issues because of that. But also more than just like the life and death circumstances that he faced, but the words that he would say and the commentary that he would offer. And then also, just even the way that you have somebody in that situation because they don't know how to deal with it. In that same situation allows other people room to be disrespectful, to say certain things that they otherwise wouldn't say to you.
Yeah. Oh no, I totally agree with that. There's a couple of different, I think they do. One of the things that I think is really powerful about this movie is that the dialogue is pretty sparse, and that I think we talked a little bit about it earlier, but how much is actually done through looks and body language and that sort of stuff. Like she encounters the killer very early on in the movie. Like he's sort of in the periphery. Like the entire, I kind of noticed that as I was going back and watching it, like on subsequent showings, how much he is sort of like around the periphery of the film the entire time. But like they meet several times before he even says a word to her. But so much can be told through like their their eyes and their body language. And I think she really needs a lot of, she deserves a lot of credit for how much she got out of something where she, like she largely is trying to, stay out of everybody's way. It just wants to be like kind of ignored, basically, like just pretend like she's not even there.
Right.
I mean, she would ultimately love to be part of like the it crowd and, have the fun life where it's a bunch of people sort of hanging out and going to the pool and, all those sorts of things. But she doesn't feel like that's a realistic expectation, and nothing that, happens in the movie, sort of gives her those. And like the fact that she just sort of like exudes all of this with very little dialogue. She doesn't talk a whole lot in the movie. And I think it's like super powerful, and like a testament on how good Laura Gallant is in the role.
Well, and even from a writing standpoint, and again, she brings a ton to it, but the writing had to be there with it as well in not giving her a lot of dialogue, because we are constantly forced to pay attention to her feelings and her reactions, and even just how she stands or where she chooses to take up space and where she chooses not to, and where she wishes she didn't take up as much space or whatever else. And so much of that comes from understanding that the less she says, the more we have to pay attention to what she says other ways.
Okay.
And I think that that's such strong writing, like just amazingly strong writing. And then you add in just an amazing fucking performance to translate that writing or lack of writing or whatever you want to call it. And that's what I love most about this movie. I wouldn't say from a plot point that I love this movie. I think it's good. I think the short film hit me way the fuck harder. And I think that the short film, if I had seen it first, would have just destroyed me to watch.
Yeah.
But then, but this performance is what makes this so fucking good for me.
Yeah, she's incredible in the movie, and really just gives life to everything. The scene that really kind of stands out to me, that kind of, because it's the sequence after they've bullied her at the pool, and basically tried to drown her, and then all of a sudden, like all of that, they steal her clothes and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, like he kind of steps in and, takes them away. And as she's like running away from like this horrible situation where she's just been basically like assaulted, and like the car comes up behind her and the people get out and they're just like antagonizing her on top of all of that, and she's just gone through this incredibly stressful, and I think that's just also a testament that shows how women have to deal with things that men just could never even fathom in a million years. Like you couldn't imagine going through a circumstance like she does at the swimming pool, and then somebody else decides they're going to like, attack you just because, and it was just because of the way she looks,
Right.
There's no other reason to do that, and just how horrible people are, and what a terrible, it just goes to, I always tell, I make these artist friends that are like, I have a friend and she's in like rural Pennsylvania. I'm like, get the fuck out of there. I'm like, just get the fuck out. You do not belong there. I was like, that is not your place and you're never going to find your people there. Like go someplace that like will support like art and, not laugh at you and not think you're weird because you have blue hair, and shit like that.
Right.
And so I really feel that for this, like, I feel like this is a character that later on down the line, if she's had some life perspective, I mean, maybe not now because of what happened, but like she would have been okay probably later on and realized that it's just the shitty people that she was around initially. And once you kind of get away from that, there's still going to be shitty people everywhere. Don't get me
Right.
wrong, but it's never going to be as intense and terrible as it is when you're a kid. And so I feel like later on she's probably going to be okay. But like, man, I felt a lot of these, because I was also in a town that was small and small-minded, and people would do things like that where they would just pick on you just because the way you looked, and it was very, very sad, and I don't miss those times at all. I don't miss that place.
I can't understate. Scott Bradley says this all the time. Sorry, S.A. Bradley says this all the time. He always says you have to find your tribe. And he always talks about how once you do, life improves so much.
Oh yeah.
And it's so unfair that when you need it the absolute most is when you don't have access to go anywhere or to meet different people, because you're stuck in a school you didn't choose. You're stuck in a family you didn't choose. You can't get away from these people that are destroying you. If I'm having a shitty day, man, I can log on and talk to probably 25 fucking people that I've met in different places around the US. And because I've had, I was older and I had money to travel or to whatever. We go to cons, we meet people, we find people like us. And it's so fucking unfair to me that the people who need that the absolute most don't have access to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really are trapped at the beginning of your life. And, it's nice if you have supportive parents, but a lot of people don't get that. And so, yeah, no, I feel that a lot. Yeah.
And even just not understanding that it's out there. Like we accept the world that we're given, so when you think, in my case, let's say, when you think Lincoln, Nebraska is everything that there is, like I wanted to go into computer programming, right? But it was the 90s. And I was like, what would I do with that in Nebraska? Because in my head, I'm stuck here. Right. And that's true for everything at that age. Like, yeah, you hear about these other places like New York City or whatever. And none of it's real. Like none of it makes sense. Like you view that it would be the same there. And then when you reach a certain age, you can go find your tribe and you do find out other people feel the way you feel or whatever else, Yeah,
no, I mean, I felt very lucky in the fact that while I did grow up in a really dinky little like Republican town, Chicago was only 2 hours away. And there were plenty of times that I skipped school and jumped on the train and would go up to Chicago and hang out all day and then jump on a train and come back. And nobody even knew that I was gone. And so I'd get the opportunity to see that there were people out there that, had similar tastes as I did. So I knew it was out there, but I couldn't wait to actually get to it. I always thought I'd end up in Chicago. And like when I found out what it cost to live in Chicago, I'm like, oh, that's never going to fucking happen. And so that's how I ended up in Phoenix instead. And now Phoenix is incredibly expensive now too. So haha, the joke's on me finally. But
I had the exact same experience with San Francisco. And every time that I'm like, fuck, it's expensive to live here, I just talk to my mother-in-law, who's a real estate agent in San Francisco.
Right.
And then I'm like, well, this sucks, but not as much as that.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah. That's cool that you had access to it, though. And it's not something we could do today. Like, if one of my kids jumped a train and tried to go to a different city, like, we have social media, so they'd be stupid and post it, or
you could
like
track
everybody's just
kids on a goddamn phone these days.
Absolutely. Like, yeah. And also it's just, I mean, I don't know. It feels like it's more dangerous to do that now, but maybe we're just more aware of shit now. I don't know.
I honestly think it was way more dangerous to do it then than it is now. But I mean, it's
Look at
still
Black
not a
Mirror.
great idea, probably.
Not Black Mirror. Look at the black phone, right? Like the kidnapping thing, like that was such a reminder that kids went missing and people just didn't do anything about it. Like, so when we talk about it's more dangerous then, yeah, almost absolutely. But like I was saying, it feels like it wasn't. And maybe that's just because we survived it, So
Well, it also doesn't feel like it wasn't because you have social media everywhere recording or presenting and
Everything
sharing
now,
stuff.
yeah.
So you think like, oh shit, it's more common, but then when you look at the data, and the data doesn't matter if it's happening to you, obviously, but you'll see the data and you're like, no, it's actually not. There aren't more, and it may be a reporting issue, but even then, the difference between how many may be reported, how many may be not reported or underreported, is not significant enough to where it's like, it's going to overtake 70s and 80s culture, or 70s to 80s attention to crime, as far as that type of culture. Seeing that something's happening and having a kid who shows up on a milk carton, you might have the old thing of like, oh, it's 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, I can't remember which one it was. Do you know where your children are? Because being Gen X, our parents didn't give a shit as long as we were back in the house by the time that the lights were coming on.
Yeah.
Or by dinner time. It was basically get out of the house, go do something.
Right. I used to tell my nieces sometimes, I was like, yeah, it was just like, if I was alive, that was fine. That's all they really cared about. Are you still alive? Okay, then it's fine. I don't really care what you're doing,
Oh, you had to do your own medical care if something did happen.
Oh yeah.
You had to be your own first responder. Like, little Billy or Timmy breaks his leg, and then it becomes a thing of like, all right, let's get our story straight as far as what happened.
Right. Oh yeah.
And even then we gotta patch you up before we get to your mom.
I was always convinced that it wasn't that my parents cared that I was alive. It was that they didn't want to unload the dishwasher, or they didn't want. so it was never about me being safe. I was completely convinced it was just like, do your fucking chores so we don't have to.
Like, wait a second, no one's emptied the dishwasher in 3 days. What the hell's going on here?
James,
I'm gonna kill him.
James, where is he dead? Oh,
knowing my parents, it would have been like, kid, because I'm not. I'm convinced my dad gave me the same name as him so that he could remember it.
Oh, really?
Anyway, a lot of trauma coming out in this episode.
Yeah, right.
This is the therapy episode. That's what this is.
Episode. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, to go back to a couple of things that were taking place to bring earlier stuff into later stuff, but the original short that the two of you talked about, you presented, gets incorporated into this film, and you see kind of how it plays out in the film version, where Sarah knows something's off, sees her friend in the back of the car, back of the van or whatever. Mm-hmm. The killer shows empathy towards her every chance he gets. I should say, for the majority of the film, every chance he gets. He even offers her a towel, and you're thinking like, oh shit, he even knew what were her clothes, and you find out later it wasn't her towel, it was Claudia's towel.
Right.
But when they're driving away and they're like, oh, help us, Sarah, help us. And she has this line that I mean, it's a short line, but I still wrote it down, which was, fuck them.
Yeah.
And if the movie had ended right there, I would have been happy. Because I'm thinking about what the mindset is of a 17 to 18-year-old kid, and how being ridiculed and how being bullied at that period of your life, how it severely impacts you to where you are going to be empathetic towards people who deserve empathy. people who bullied, people who it's kind of like the whole thing with the submarines, right? So with the submarine thing, there was like this big debate or divide over like, oh, should you guys have been making fun of those people that were in the submarine?
Mm-hmm.
And someone posted something which I had no problem sharing, which is, well, they had a family, you shouldn't be cheering. And the person who made the tweet or whatever it was spelled it out and simply said, these people had very little empathy to begin with in their lives. They didn't care about safety. They cheer for the death of workers on a daily basis. Like, these are the type of people, not these individuals, but just the type that take out insurance policies and life insurance policies on their employees so that they then can collect them. These are the people that would buy racehorses, torture and execute the racehorses to collect the insurance claim on the horse because they really didn't want it. They understood if we buy it, we can insure it for X amount of dollars more. This is an investment. So you're dealing with a group of individuals that if they did not have the money, we would be talking about them on true crime dramas as far as the way in which they interact with people. So the idea of, it's a shame that what happened, but you should be able to ridicule people that, whether we know it or not, may not have been good people. And to be honest, if we had social media in the 40s and it was announced like Hitler shot himself, and I'm not comparing these people to Hitler. I don't want that taken again.
Yeah.
The best feedback we've ever gotten on this show.
I feel as though,
But did you compare to Hitler?
I didn't. It was the old nature versus nurture thing. Yeah. And I said something to the effect of the penguin, maybe he was always evil, just like Hitler was always evil. It doesn't matter.
Batman Returns.
Batman Returns. And so maybe it's not an issue of like, oh, you could have hugged him and made him better, or you could have helped him out. Maybe some people are just fucked people. So if we had social media in the 40s, I guarantee you there would have been people who were sympathetic to the Nazis, to the Nazi party. I mean, there were
people that were sympathetic to the Nazis in America.
But I mean, as far as like on social media, as far as like they would have been on social media, this is really sad. I can't believe you guys are cheering that Hitler's dead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is really inappropriate, guys.
Yeah. A person's gone now. You're like,
he had a family.
Good.
And you know what that family did? They all fucking changed their names.
Yep. They didn't want to be involved with that. They're like, no.
There's a really good bit by I think Billy Connolly, the Scottish comedian, where I was listening to they must have thought I was demented, because this is back when you didn't have the TVs and everything, so you could just tune into different music channels on your flight. So this is like 20 something years ago. Mm-hmm. So actually, no, it was 20 years ago. So I'm listening to it, and they've got like the comedy channel. So it's all like Sirius XM, but you type the number in, and like channel 5 is classical, channel 6 is pop, channel 10 is comedy. Then there's like audiobooks that they recorded and uploaded to Delta. So I'm listening to the comedy thing because I'm like, well, I want to hear something. Billy Connolly comes in, and it's like this from an hour special that he has. Yeah. And he says, you know what? I was really bored in Germany one time, so I decided to look up Hitler in the German phone book. And he said he kept trying to get random phone books to see if he could find anybody named Hitler. And he said in this whole bit, he said, it dawned on me, why the fuck would you keep the name Hitler after World War II? And then somebody on the History Channel or somebody associated with the History Channel tried to track down any distant relatives of Hitler, and found like a couple, but none of them were willing to talk. They were like, we don't
say.
We don't want anything to do with that guy. It's been 60 years. But still a fresh wound. All the stuff he did.
Now I know what really happened with Latrine in Robin Hood Men in Tights. You've solved the mystery for me.
Oh my God. But yeah,
Anyway.
we have the same people. I can't believe he did that. Oh,
Yeah, you were like
he was
social
so
media
young.
You were like social media would defend Nazis, and I was like, oh, so that would look exactly like today. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, you'd have a Nazi who would buy Twitter, obviously, so they could then allow Nazis onto the platform and then question things like saying Nazi and cis are slurs, as opposed to don't be a fucking Nazi and then learn how words work, which means that you are cis if you're not trans. It's not a slur, dumbass. I'm so tired of people thinking billionaires are smart.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, like, somebody told me once that they really loved Elon Musk, and I was like, what did he ever do? Like, his dad owned an emerald mine that was like blood emeralds. Oh, great. Wow, we should really celebrate that. Awesome. I'm just like,
he started PayPal. No, he bought PayPal with the money that his family gave him.
Just like he did with Tesla, like he did with Twitter, you know.
Well, even with Tesla, it was like so many people don't realize, and I will share this information anytime I get a chance. Can't share it on Twitter because I'm sure he would probably ban me.
Another social media you could be banned from. How exciting.
I know, right? How many phones can I get? So anyway, the idea that when he went forward, because all these people that were doing great PR for him, were going around. Oh, he invented this. He invented this. And he's going to release the patents for all the Teslas and the way the Tesla works. And then someone came forward and like, he has to. These were government funded research. This was government funded research.
Yeah.
He has to release them.
He didn't.
This isn't something that he gets to keep, and it's not his. It was the engineers that created all this stuff and the taxpayer money that went into it. And people are like, well, it just proves that he's smart. I'm like, no, it proves that he's a con artist because he went to the government. Now, of course, the people who fell for it are just as guilty.
Right.
But he went to the government asking for some subsidies or whatever, or some car. I can't remember which way it worked, but asked for some funding and used the name Daimler Chrysler and said, oh, Daimler Chrysler is already an investor in this to help get us cars on the road. He had no contact with Daimler Chrysler, but then went to Daimler Chrysler and it's like, oh, yes, we've got a lot of money that's going to be coming in from the U.S. federal government. And if you want to be in on this, I suggest that you come along. So he was able to con both individuals, or I should say con one in order to get the other. But yeah, anyway, hope he needs to get on one of his rockets finally, since he's interested in going to space.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, like that, the submarine guy, put his money where his mouth is and drove that thing to the Titanic. I'm sure we're going to get lots of hate mail on this one.
No, because I haven't even started. There's things I could say about them, which I'm going to save for private discussions. I don't want to bring the episode down. When we're talking about such a great movie, I don't want to bring it down.
Yeah. The one thing I really want to say about the sub thing, I don't care if people celebrate. I don't care if people are sad that humans died. I don't care how it affects you. That's great. Whatever. But like, the one that really got me was everybody jumping the stepson's ass for going to a concert, because my stepfather died and we were not close. We did not like each other at all. Right. And I did the thing I had to do. I went to the funeral and shit, but I didn't come home when he was dying. I didn't sit by CNN to make sure the coverage was right. Like, what the fuck's this dude supposed to do? And I'm not defending a billionaire kid in any way. I don't know how old he is, but he's a kid compared to me.
Right.
And I'm not defending him. I'm just saying I would have gone to see Blink as well. Like, Mark Hoppus almost fucking died from stage 4 cancer recently. Go see Blink while you can.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely true. Although I will just let everybody know that I have seen Blink 182 many times in the past. And they weren't worth $25, let alone the $300 that the nosebleed seats were. So if you
But if you were a billionaire,
Even if I was a bit like somebody was like, hey, do you want to go see the Misfits? And I'm like, why would I want to give Glenn Danzig money? And then the tickets were like $25, and they're like, hey, like I had a friend who spent $500 to go see Danzig, the Danzig Misfits at Madison Square Garden, $500. And I'm like, nah, $25 seems like a lot to me. I was like, I know I've probably paid more than that to see like the Jerry only Misfits, but I just, fuck Glenn Danzig, I was like, does my friend Danny get to come and knock him out again? Like, did Danny even say it was okay for him to come back to Arizona? Like, I want to know these things. I don't give a shit about, and so like, I don't
What I love most about this is that I literally remember your Facebook statuses about this very thing. So it's hilarious to me because as soon as you started, I was like, oh man, I remember that.
Yeah. So he was just talking about that recently. He's my buddy Danny Marianino. Don't Punch a Rock Star is the name of the book. The 10th anniversary edition just came out. 12% more hate mail. So I'm gonna plug his book. I don't have a book, so I'm gonna plug Danny's book instead.
You need to get a book.
I do need to get a book.
Buy Brian's book. It's available for pre-order now. Just send him $600.
That's right.
As soon as it's out, you'll have it.
First, you'll be my number one priority. I promise.
You could do like wasn't it Wu-Tang who had the one copy of the album and it sold for a lot? You could do that with your book. Yeah, well, they sold it to the Pharma Bro, and then that guy it got repossessed. But that's the funniest part is it gets repossessed, and somebody else owns that record now. For I'm sure a lot less than what the Pharma Bro paid for it.
Yeah, because it went up for an government auction, I believe.
Yeah, because they made him like, I mean, that was part of his deal. Was like, you got to give up your money, and he's like, okay. And so, he had to, I would hope that it went to like some sort of children's charity because Wu-Tang is for the children. So
there you go. This is not where I expected this episode to go, but I love it.
I know, right? Did you think we would talk about Wu-Tang on the same episode as Piggy? Probably not, but
you got to diversify your bonds, man.
Yeah. Oh man. I saw Wu-Tang, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. It's been a while. At the Celebrity. Do you know the Celebrity, Don?
You
were here for a while, right?
Yeah. I remember. I went to a few shows there.
Yeah, so great venue, right? Like no stage more than like 500 feet from the stage or whatever. And
the stage spins. And
the stage spins, yeah. And
I always go to Christmas pudding there. I love it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They do Christmas pudding there every year. You're right. I saw John Waters there. I saw lots of people there. But Wu-Tang was a lot of fun. And I always felt really bad because ODB was, as Method Man said, on the Iron Bar vacation at the time. So I didn't get to see the full Wu-Tang. And now that's not possible anymore.
You didn't get the full tang.
I didn't get the full tang. I got like 9/10 of the tang, Yeah, I think you got
watered down tang.
Yeah, I mean, you God's there, but you're like, I don't want to fucking see you God. I want to see ODB. What the fuck, So.
I actually say that all the time. I don't want to see you God.
Yes.
Oh, that's different. Sorry.
Exactly.
Pulling it back to the movie for just a minute because this is the last thing in my notes, and so I just want to get it in so I don't have to look at my notes anymore. Yeah. I really love this this version of a secret first love. Like she has such an interesting. It's not exactly a crush. It's not exactly love. It's not but it's that
spark.
Yeah, spark. That's a great word for it. Mm-hmm. And I was just curious what you guys thought of that whole portrayal and just the weirdness of it, but also just how real that is, that when you're so alone, right? Like anything can give you that and can add to that feeling. Plus, girls like a bad boy, so you know. Oh, okay. I had to throw that in. Go
He's
ahead.
oddly
Jesus.
sweet to her throughout the entirety of the movie. He only really ever loses his temper at the very end when she's decided that she's not on his side.
Which is
And
basically rejecting him,
exactly, yes. Which, then
and that's
again,
incel behavior. Yeah.
yeah. And so again, sort of, I feel like that's sort of the male representation of like rage versus the female representation of rage,
Right.
where it's like, it's much more outer and, explosive with him versus, much more internal and, implosive with her. But like, it really does. And you're right. Like, whenever you hear about like these people that fall for these people that are just absolute awful humans, not even humans, and it's like, well, yeah, because they had no real barometer. Like they had no bar to set what humanity should look like. And so any sort of attention, and it doesn't even have to be good attention, it could be bad attention. A lot of times it is bad attention. But like anytime that you sort of have that, it's still attention. And that can be very seductive to somebody who is starved for attention, like this person. And so I can see why it takes her a while for her to really make that decision to not be on his side. Because like, he's the only person in her life that is treating her like a human at that point, which is so sad. But like, and it's like just this outside force. And, obviously it's not like really what it's like to treat like a human, but just like some modicum of like kindness, just any and like noticing. Like the thing that I think really sort of like took her aback was him putting the snack that she was going to buy and at the convenience store or whatever, like on her windowsill, and like he's not even like at that point he's like just barely even making contact with her. He's like not even really letting her know who he is or any of that stuff. It just sort of shows up, and it's like something that she needed in the moment because she'd had that really sort of like a painful conversation with her mom, where she just sort of like belittled her again. That might have been the one in the shower, even where you're just like, even in the shower, you can't get any privacy. It's like, it's like,
and
Jesus
she's at her
Christ.
most vulnerable. Yeah.
And there is no break from the attacks on her.
Right.
No.
Yeah. You can't.
I mean, but physical appearance and her intellect, because I think the mother even calls her like, "Oh, you're so dumb," or she makes some comment to her.
Yeah, like, what are you, stupid? Yeah.
Right. Something that's gonna, be steered into that poor girl's brain. You were talking, like I think both of you had talked about different times where like, people that are supposed to care about you say these really super hurtful things, and like, and then like you said, sort of revisionist history or gaslighting or whatever the fuck you want to call it, where they're like, oh, that never really happened, but like, I specifically remember like the conversation I had with my mom where she's like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be a writer and director. And she's like, well, that's stupid,
Wow.
And she wasn't saying it in terms of like, she was saying it more in terms of like, you're probably not going to be able to make a living that way.
Right.
But that's not the way she said it. She said it, that's stupid, and it's like, that's seared into my brain. Like I didn't even try for a long time because I'm like, why would I do that? That's stupid, like, and so like, I had to like unlearn those things and like, be the person that goes, hey, you know what? That's not stupid. Plenty of people do that and make a lot of money doing it and have a really fun, adventurous life and, all those sorts of things. And you have to like, sort of like be the person that you needed, that's like one of the biggest lessons that you learn as you get older is to become the person that you needed when you were a kid. And so like, I know now, and, we've had the conversation and she's like, oh, I don't remember that. I don't think so much in the like I didn't say that, but probably like I don't want to remember that would be more, or she very well might not remember it because, it was just sort of an off the cuff remark that she made one time when we were like driving somewhere, but like that, I'll never forget that, and so I feel like those sorts of moments are portrayed so well in this movie. Like it's almost triggering, how accurate it is. I almost want to give everybody like a trigger warning to watch this movie because it's going to be a rough ride. It's a worthwhile ride, and it's something that I think you learn if you actually like take the time to watch it. But it's not going to be like, a drive through the park or anything like that. Don't expect that coming into this movie.
And I think everything that you just said, again, going back to this decision at the end of, do you take out your bullies? Do you just leave them hanging there? Do you help them? Right?
Yeah.
Like everything you just said, she literally sacrifices the only not sacrifices, that's a terrible word for it, but she takes out the only person that has shown her nothing but care.
Yeah.
Right.
And like we look at it and we can see grooming and we can see this is very bad and we can see all this shit, but she doesn't see that in the moment, right? And she gives up all of that because she feels unsafe, but also to help them.
Yeah.
And she could just leave them. I love that she blows the one's hand off. That's fucking great.
That is my favorite part. I'm like, yes, exactly, bitch. I shouldn't say bitch. I'm trying very much to not say gendered like swear words anymore. I'm trying to like transition it all into asshole because we all have assholes. Doesn't matter who you are. You all have assholes. So, but like, yeah, fuck you, asshole. There you go. I corrected my own, but yeah. She deserved it for sure.
But she is literally doing what you're saying. She's trying to be the person that she needs. Mm-hmm. She needs to help them. She probably doesn't want to.
Right.
But that's who she has to be. And I used to work at this rehab and we had a big sign that said integrity is doing the right thing when no one is looking.
Mm-hmm.
And she could have slaughtered them and walked the fuck out of there, and they would have never come after her.
Nope. Yeah, she would have been fine. They would have pinned it all on that dude, and she could have had her revenge, and
she could have like super popular as the final girl.
Yeah, that's the Hollywood ending. Like if Hollywood was making this movie, that's the ending. She kills them all, possibly the guy too, because he finally finally goes over the edge. And that's the thing that I really love about this is he is never the one that like pushes it really, It's like her that makes all of the decisions, It would have been very easy for her to just do nothing. She could have just like stood back and let him take care of business and, and it probably would have been very satisfying to watch, or whatever. Or maybe not. Maybe it'd be horribly scarring, but like it would have been easy to do nothing. And she chose not to do nothing. And that is like a brave choice, especially in that moment where it's just like, it's so much easier to do nothing, especially for somebody that has been trying to, in their own fucked up way, be nice to you,
Right.
And so, especially for somebody that probably is not used to anybody being nice to them, or only being nice for ulterior motives. Mm-hmm. Like that just has to be incredibly trying. And I just love the picture, the poster is so good, because it's just like, I think literally the last frame of the film is the poster of her standing in the middle of the street, just covered head to toe in blood,
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't give you like a indication of the trip you're going to go through in this movie, I don't know what does. Like that is a way to tell you exactly what the movie is without saying anything about the movie at all.
Right. to go off of what the two of you are bringing up with this, one, I love the way not just the way that she killed it, because I wrote in my notes, because I thought it was funny at the time to have this joke, because of the one of the shitty friends keep referring to her as Piggy. She doesn't call her Sarah. She says, "Oh, Piggy, help us. And I'm like, you guys care so little about her other than making fun that you can't even fucking remember her name.
Yeah.
Like you're so on there. If there was somebody I'm cool with, like let's say James and I had nicknames for each other, that name is not going away unless it's like a serious moment, right?
Right.
So my kid has an understanding where she doesn't curse, she doesn't want to curse, but I've told her, I'm like, if you're ever in a situation, you got to do something that's out of the normal. She's like, what? I said, say whatever curse words come to your mind. Like if somebody's abducting you, say, get away from me, motherfucker. Because when people hear a child cursing, they're going to look at it in that direction, right? So I'm saying that because it's something that's going to set you off. My wife does not she never calls me by my name. Ever. And it's one of those things, I guess it was one of those challenges or what on TikTok where it's like, oh, call your significant number by their name, member by their name. And you saw these reactions of people that were being, instead of calling them babe or sweetie, honey, whatever term of affection there was, they were calling them like David, Sarah, Mike, Cheryl. And they were like, why the hell are you calling me that? Why are you calling me by my name? And you see how that reaction goes. Whereas I see Piggy's response, which is, you don't even fucking know my name. You're still calling me that. Like in this situation, you're still going there with me. So it's just adding insult to injury. So for me, I don't know if I would have saved them. Now, I know I've talked about being older, but I mean, in her shoes, I don't know if I would have saved them, because if I walk in and you call me a name that you've been using to make fun of me for all these years or however long they've known each other, and that's the first thing you say to me is, well, one, they called her an idiot while she was trying to help one of the girls. Which again, I was like, why are you this compassionate? Why are you this nice? So, I mean, she's definitely somebody I look at. I'm like, I'm glad you made the choice you did, because you had every reason to not help them, to not save them. But the line I wrote was when they called her that, I was like, oh, Piggy's about to go ham. And I wrote down right next to it, Sarah. So when she does start doing the neck biting thing, you've got so many different things that are going on. One, she stabs the guy several times. One of the ways that, not necessarily the way in which pigs and hogs will kill, but boars, they're notorious for going for the femoral artery, or if you happen to get on the ground, they're going to go for your jugular. Like, they're going to attack. So I don't know if this was intentional or this was just something that was done for the film and for the visual, but I thought it was kind of a cool touch that you had all these moments where animals are being presented in a certain way, and even human beings get presented as animals, where when she walks into that room where they're all hung up like sides of beef. And it just took me out. I was like, holy shit, this is great bookending, where you start in the butcher and now you end up in a slaughterhouse. I'm assuming it's a slaughterhouse.
Something, it seemed like it, yeah.
And you like the guy kills the bull with the car. So the one thing that becomes this part of a story that becomes part of another story that you're waiting, like, okay, well, this bull's going to come into play somehow. You see the bull and Sarah like out on the road, and you get a little bit fearful, like, oh shit, she's going to get attacked by the bull. Like, all the shit she's gone through, she's going to get attacked by the bull. But the bull ends up becoming this device that then, gets them where they need to be, because they have that car accident, and he drags her or carries her. Which is a great visual, because whenever we have these movies, there's never a plus size woman that's being carried off. And he's not carrying her off in a sexual way, or at least I'm assuming he's not carrying her off in a sexual way. He's carrying her off in the sense of I'm rescuing you, I'm saving you again. I'm going to continue saving you. I'm going to be here for you. And she embraces him. Again, no words are said, but she embraces him because she feels safe with this guy at this moment. Even a little bit, head's been knocked around a little bit, but she feels safe at this moment because this is the only person who's extended any form of kindness, however warped it may be.
Yeah.
But the only person who's extended any form of kindness to her. And it's very similar to the La Pieta thing with the Madonna and Jesus, as far as like the carrying and holding. But it's a beautiful thing because I can count, again, to go back to counting on one hand, I can count on one hand how many times I've seen a plus sized or larger woman or larger presenting woman picked up and carried off and not have it played as a joke.
Right.
Because just estimate. I mean, I think she's like 5'1", 5'2". She might be 225, right? Because everybody's bodies present differently, present their weight differently, right? And the way that movies typically turn it is like, oh my God, this woman is 180 pounds. Because I've heard so many bullshit discussions about what a woman should weigh and what a woman how her body should be presented, right?
Right.
The fact that these guys, and I'm speaking of cishet men, will present it as though, oh my God, I can't pick her up. I can't do this. But what's great is now you see on social media, there are these guys that are, gassing what have been determined big girls or thick women, gassing them up where it's like, oh, weigh your significant other or ask your significant other for their weight and then pick it up and hold it. And it did two things. One, it humbled a lot of guys because they're like, oh, I'm strong. And then like their girl was like 120 pounds. They couldn't hold it. And then there were guys who were, like, it's like, girl, you're 200 pounds. You're not 200 pounds. And he like picks her up like it's fucking nothing. Like it's nothing. And he's like, oh, I'm going to carry you around all the time. Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And you see how there are people that, even in a non-sexual way, it's like, oh, there are people who they want to get fucking picked up and carried. It just that feeling, that sense that they are worthy of some type of love, some type of connection, some type of affection. Now, again, as warped as the killer's motives are, you still have that connection with that other person, and it's beautiful to see. It's beautiful to see, and I'm glad that. I wish there were more domestic films that presented it this way, as opposed to it being a joke of, oh my God, I'm normally 120 pounds, but I ate, I don't know, I ate a salad. Now I'm like 135. I'm so fat, and make it playing it off as a joke, or even I'm sorry, James, I got to bring it up. Even on an episode of The Office, there's this one episode, or a 2-part episode called Weight Loss, where that's the whole goal of everybody. Whichever branch loses the most weight gets extra vacation days. But one of the characters is going to be gone, so she steps on the scale, and like the total weight for the entire branch was like 2,300 pounds and change. So they remind him like, oh, Pam, you're not going to be here. You're leaving to go to school. You need to step off the scale. And as she steps off, the guy reading the thing says, oh, okay, everybody, you guys weigh 2,212 pounds. And so people start doing the math. And one of the guys who's an accountant, which is part of the joke, he says, oh my God, you weigh 226 pounds? And she turns to him. She's like, no, not even close. And after they leave that spot, one of the other women looks at the number that's on the scale that everybody has, jumps off so she can look at the numbers, and then jumps back on. And these are both two small women. You have this thing that goes on where they're making fun of another person, a couple of the bigger people, their weights and things like that. But it's never presented as though like, I mean, they eventually get to this point where like, hey, this is unhealthy. We shouldn't be doing shit like this. But it's very representative and indicative of how it's treated within U.S. culture, as far as like, you are not okay as a woman because the standards are different for men. But you are not okay as a woman unless you fit this body type, as far as mainstream America. And because of social media, because of access, and because of people who have different body types, now you're seeing a lot more body positivity, a lot more body forward, image forward type of programming and inclusion, to where these people are with us every day. Like, it doesn't have to be 1,000-pound life or 600-pound life or anything like that, where we're looking at somebody as an oddity. You can have people that are 2, 3, 4, 500 pounds that have healthier numbers than you. But just because you don't like the way that they look doesn't mean they're undeserving of love or affection. Sorry, that was a long way to go off that one quote that I wanted to use.
Well, I think I said pretty much everything I wanted to say. I like how we just jumped right over the middle of it and went right to the ending, because the ending is what this movie's about anyway.
I was gonna say, them looking for the phone, it wasn't that important.
Yeah, it's true.
Part of me wanted like the mom to die too, because I'm sorry, she was a horrible character. Like, that's
so terrible. Yeah.
She honestly, I mean, I don't know. I'll have to ask Claudia this. I'm gonna have to ask if there is a Spanish nation, not Spanish language, but a Spanish nation equivalent to Karen, because that was pretty much who she was. She was like, "Don't you know who I am? You need to call the civil guardians out here to do this. You need to be looking for my daughter," which I get, but it's just the way, the attitude she has about it, especially when she confronts Sarah and her mother, and just the way she just, I don't even want to. I don't like people like that.
Yeah, no, totally. She's a terrible person. Yeah, I was actually kind of sad when Sarah calls him off of them, because I'm like, no, they kind of deserve it more than anybody. So,
But other than that, James, I got nothing.
Cool.
Yeah, I think I'm wrapped up too.
Well, then let's do movie recs. So, Brian, if people liked this movie, what else should they watch?
Oh man, not The Whale. I'm glad that we went the whole rest of the movie without talking about that film.
What about The Clumps?
Like, that bothers me less, because it's not meant to be realistic. I'm trying to think of one where we can maybe fill Don's need for lust a little bit, for bloodlust a little bit here, and say, if you want the gnarlier ending of this movie, watch Carrie. Because like, Carrie is essentially very similar to this movie, except Carrie decides that none of these people deserve to live.
Right.
So if you're like, no, I think those bullies should have got what they deserved, watch Carrie, and they get what they deserve in Carrie.
Man, I love that. I didn't even think of Carrie. That's a fantastic one. My double feature, I'm annoyed by. You both know this because I've already told you, but so theme-wise, my double feature really plays in, and it's Pig. And when I watched Pig, I was blown away by how I expected one ending, and then I got a compassionate, very different ending.
Yeah.
Very, very much about integrity, walking away. There's nothing I can do. Revenge will not help me. And I hate their titles together. I hate that I'm doing Pig and Piggy, but I think that it's such a thematically similar thing. The other one I would throw in that I thought of later was I Saw the Devil, which is all about revenge and how it doesn't get you what you think it will.
Yeah.
And when we've done
destroys you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that would be really cool thematically as well, because it's choosing the other choice. We've done episodes on both of these. Please check them out. I was blown away by both of those movies, and I think they just have a ton to say, and definitely, yeah.
I'm glad
All right,
somebody did.
Don.
I saw The Devil because that's a really good one.
Yeah, it was Daniel Barnett, I believe, and yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So Don, 642 movies. Go.
641 because Brian took Carrie. I'm going to go with another Spanish. I'm going to have a few Spanish language films on here. So I'll do those first. The Skin You Live In with Antonio Banderas, where I don't know how well it would age now, considering some of the issues with transitioning and the fact that he's basically forcing somebody to transition. But it's I would just say make your decision when you watch the film. I said Spanish language. This is actually a German movie. Actually, I'll do both of them. There's Veronica, which is a Spanish language horror film about a young teenage girl and being in a Catholic school and dealing with some traumatic stuff. There's Victoria, which is a German language film. It was German language film. She's a Spanish worker that goes to Germany and gets involved in a heist because she just wants to fit in. She wants to find her group. Where are my other Spanish ones? Oh, Pan's Labyrinth, of course, is going to be one. The Bar, great film. I'm still waiting for somebody to request it so we can come on and talk about it. The Platform, French language films. I got two, and it's going to be The Delicatessen.
Delicatessen's great.
And High Tension would be the other one. I know how James feels about that one. Because I was worried watching this. I was like, son of a bitch, is the guy in the van actually going to be Sarah? Is this what's going to happen? Are we going to have that kind of twist again? So there's that. Canadian film, I think it was Canadian. The Lie, very well done as far as like that same thing. If you want to have a film about a bunch of stupid teenagers doing stupid things, including bullying each other and just being ridiculous, the entire Porky's series for anybody. I was surprised that it aged as well as it did. Didn't age greatly, but it aged better than I thought it was going to.
Honestly, they give it to the stupid hillbillies pretty good in that movie.
Oh, I love it.
I have to give them credit. And that was in the 80s where it was easy to be on the stupid hillbilly side. So,
oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
Silence of the Lambs would be another one. Misery, a film that James mentioned and was surprised that I didn't mention it. Ma.
Oh yeah.
Buried with oh my God, Ryan Reynolds, which I don't think he got enough credit for that film. That was really shocking.
What convinced me he could act.
Oh yeah.
I was like, he can be like a goofy, asshole-ish idiot. I was like, oh yeah, he can play that all day long. But like that movie, I was like, oh, this guy can act, so.
Yeah, most definitely. House at the End of the Street, Megan, and then last but not least, James, The Blackening.
That would be last week's episode, which is where I talked about Ma.
And this is the one thing I'm going to say, since I mentioned the French and Spanish language ones, the German ones. This is not you can't be a real horror fan if you're not going to watch foreign films. What I will say to that is, if you want to expand your understanding of horror, you can't stick with just domestic. You have to watch Korean films. You have to watch Spanish language films. You have to watch German language films. You have to watch even regional, Portuguese, you got some really good Brazilian movies. So I think to understand the field of horror, the genre of horror, and the subgenres within it, you got to get over worrying about subtitles. You got to get over it.
It's also going to open you up to things that you never were sort of even aware of, and like culturally, I mean, that's how I got introduced to lots of different cultures, were through different, country's horror movies, and then becoming more interested, from that. And I definitely, and like there's just, it's so easy to get them now too. Like it's not like you have to put this huge effort in, like when I used to have to do it, 15 or 20 years ago, when you're just like, oh, I gotta be on the lookout for that, and I'm not sure exactly if I'm going to be able to find that anywhere, so I might just have to like buy it, blind buy, and we'll see if it's any good. And you get burned by movies that way sometimes, but you can get some really amazing stuff that way too. But yeah, I mean, like just the Korean movies alone,
Oh
like,
yeah.
I mean, like I always, when people ask me what my favorite non-English speaking country is, for films, like Korea is, they're so like culturally similar to Americans that I almost feel like there's not even a disconnect at all. There's like a slight cultural, like whatever the small cultural things are, but like the themes and those sorts of things. And I think everybody sort of was, glaringly made aware of that when Parasite came out, but like they've been doing that for years, and have been amazing at it. Really have just, and like the production values are top notch too. So it's not like where you're like, oh, I don't want to go to some other country because it's going to look like shit. No, it's none of that stuff. So
straight out, 3 of my favorite movies overall are because I watch foreign horror, and that's Train to Busan, Parasite, Tigers Are Not Afraid.
Oh yeah.
And not having those in my life would suck so fucking badly. And don't give me the bullshit about American remakes, because fuck that shit. And fuck whoever made American Old Boy.
That was Spike Lee, actually.
Yeah,
Was it really?
Yeah, it was Spike.
Okay, it's not bad on its own, but like comparatively,
it's not.
Stop touching shit and just let it be. Well, now I feel bad. Sorry, Spike. But
it's not Spike's greatest film. So,
but I want to just say, like, what you're talking about is exactly what we were saying about finding your tribe as well. And it's that same, you don't even know what else is out there, man. Like you don't know what you can find and what door it might open and what interests you might develop or whatever else. So just give shit a shot, man.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know what you might find. You might find something special. So,
all right. I guess that wraps it up, except for one thing. Brian, tell people where they can find you online and follow you and all that good shit.
Yeah, I mean, like mostly take a look at BS Movies Podcast on Twitter until there's like, I keep waiting for Blue Sky or whatever to take over so that I can stop being on goddamn Twitter. But that's probably the best, easiest way to find like new episodes. And I also very regularly post like what I'm watching and give like short capsule reviews and stuff like that. So,
tell our listeners about your show. Like, how many episodes are you up to now?
I just actually put episode 625 in the hopper today.
Wow.
So, yeah, we've been going for, oh gosh, over 5 years now. I'm trying to think when we actually started. It's probably getting closer to like 6 or 7.
We're coming up on 4, and you were around. You're literally who I went to when I wanted to start this.
Yeah, I think we've been doing it about 3 years when you came around. So yeah, that's probably about right, about 7 years or something like that.
That's awesome.
So yeah, very, lasting as well. A lot of podcasts will come out and they'll be great for like 5 episodes and then you never hear them again. So we are consistently good for 625 episodes at least. So.
And we've been consistently mediocre for 200.
Woohoo!
All right, so that wraps it up. As always, I'm James Sabata.
And I am Don Guillory.
And we'll see you next week here at thenecronama.com.